The Xbox brand is in a bit of a state right now. It feels a bit lost, soulless, and without any real vision. And this is despite it having arguably the best first-party roadmap out of all three major console platformers 4 years into the console generation. For years, the joke was Xbox has no games, and now it's starting to get loads of them after completing its acquisition sprees, including Microsoft's biggest acquisition ever, its $70 billion purchase of Activision Blizzard King. And yet, despite the age-old problems being seemingly rectified, the Xbox brand seems like it's in a major state of disarray. And why is that? Why is Xbox in this state, and what can be done, if anything, to rectify this? At the start of this generation, Xbox and its leadership made quite a few promises. Xbox reassured fans that it had learned lessons from its disastrous Xbox One generation. The generation where its lack of investment in first-party studios was becoming glaringly obvious, especially when PlayStation used its first-party studios to completely trounce Xbox and its first-party efforts, most of which just relied on Halo, Gears, and Forza. The weakness of the Xbox One console in terms of power, especially with the price point, was such a problem that the leadership at Xbox declared and promised that Xbox would never be out of position in power and price. The Xbox One X was a strong positive step and really a much better machine than the PlayStation 4 Pro. Coming to the start of this generation, Xbox was almost intent on being the most pro-consumer brand out of all the platforms, and its primary weapon was, and still is, Xbox Game Pass. But it seems like in all those areas, power and value, Xbox has failed in some way, shape or form. Xbox was proud in announcing the power of the Xbox Series X. The specs on paper look thoroughly better than the PlayStation 5, and a big part of the discourse amongst Xbox fans and Xbox content creators was this so-called power difference. However, right off the bat at launch, many were surprised, including Digital Foundry, when Xbox seemed to struggle, and in a key area that has now become a big part of gamers' expectations when it comes to performance, and that is frame rate. Not only have a lot of PlayStation titles had parity with the Xbox when it comes to frame rate, in many games the PS5 has been besting the Series X, but this shouldn't even be the case. Xbox should be thoroughly outdoing PlayStation, but for a myriad of reasons, that has not happened, and developers prioritize PlayStation over Xbox. So much so that Xbox is now asking developers to comment on why this is even the case. When it comes to the power narrative, Xbox has truly lost it, and this is before the PlayStation 5 Pro has even released. The PS5 Pro will just cement the tech advantage even more and relegate Xbox development priorities further back for third-party developers. Xbox decided to do 2 SKUs, and the Series S is the cheaper entry point for the mass market to get into the Xbox ecosystem. Initially, this seemed like a masterstroke, but owing to poor execution, the Xbox console sales are still barely tracking above the Xbox One, and that isn't great at all. Then you have talk about the Xbox Series S holding things back, and there are 2 very big glaring examples of where the Series S has held things back. One with Baldur's Gate 3 and the other potentially with Black Myth Wukong. There are many reports of many devs who have cited their frustration with having to develop for the Series S. So Xbox has not made it easier for developers at all to cater for the Xbox hardware. They went with this new GDK dev tool, whereas Sony's development did not change remarkably. Devs have 2 SKUs to develop for. Then Microsoft goes even further by undermining the console with its own confusing messaging. Xbox almost seems proud in advertising that consumers don't even need a console, and then point to the Amazon Fire Stick of all things, all the while trying to pacify and convince Xbox fans that it has not relegated the console user base. But that message is falling on deaf ears, while Xbox is also trying to court PC users. So why should developers prioritize Xbox consoles when the Xbox leadership and marketing suggest that console isn't even a priority, and the reality on the ground also suggests that? I will always maintain that the console user base for a platform holder should be the nucleus of all of its efforts, and it should be the main priority. But Xbox console gamers are not feeling like their priority at all, and for good reason, especially when PC users appear to get more favorable terms. A lot of people downplay console sales, saying that Microsoft doesn't really care about hardware sales, but that is not the truth, especially when the console users form a big bulk of Xbox Game Pass subscribers. Those downplaying the importance of console sales point to Xbox desiring more software sales and subscribers for its Game Pass service. But even on those two fronts, Xbox isn't doing that well. Xbox Game Pass subs have plateaued on consoles and generally have fallen well below projections, as Microsoft itself has admitted. During the FTC trial, Spencer was presented with a slide from Microsoft internally that showed an aspiration to grow Game Pass subs to 100 million by 2030. When asked if Spencer believed in these projections, Spencer stated that he hoped that the majority of customers would be brought in off of their own hardware before 2030. But is that really going to happen the way Xbox treats its console user base and its mixed messaging? Do Spencer's statements even apply now? Xbox as a brand has been completely transformed from last generation, where it hardly had any studios. No more does Xbox need to rely on just Halo, Gears and Forza, because Xbox is now a publishing powerhouse. I mean, just look at this graphic. Look at the sheer number of massive publishers now under the Xbox banner. Bethesda, Activision, Blizzard, and look at the number of Xbox game studios. And yet, despite this, Xbox this generation has had a very slow crawl of first-party releases, and there is a big question mark regarding the quality of these titles. Redfall is a huge failure that led to the demise of the studio making it. Forza Motorsport did not set the world on fire either, and it got bested by its rival Gran Turismo. When Xbox did finally get a critical and creative win with Hi-Fi Rush, that didn't even sell that well, even on the PlayStation platform, and Xbox shut Tango Gameworks down. Hellblade 2 is a great cinematic title, sure, but it feels more like a title that should have been released at the start of this generation. For many years, Xbox fans have been promised with a release cadence of first-party titles that will absolutely dominate our playtime. Xbox keeps saying that it has so many first-party titles that it's struggling to balance their release dates so that they don't cannibalize each other. Yet, year on year, we're met with long periods of nothingness, just like this year. Hellblade 2 came out in May. Since then, it's been extremely quiet. And then all of a sudden, at the tail end of this year, we are finally set to receive the likes of Indiana Jones, the annual Call of Duty, Stalker, which is not a first-party title, but still, and then Avowed, which has been delayed into next year. Next year. That's what we keep getting told about the so-called flood of Xbox first-party games, but it never really arrives, despite on paper, Xbox having a whole slew of studios and IPs. How is it that in 2024, where PlayStation has had a quiet first-party year, that somehow Xbox has been left behind for most of it? Xbox could have taken advantage of this, but instead let Sony coast through on third-party titles and a couple of first-party ones. People keep saying Xbox shouldn't be made to rush out games, and that is true. But if you give Xbox the time to realize the best product, then surely the quality should reflect all that extra development time. However, that really hasn't played out in practice, barring a few exceptions. Think about it. Starfield, great game, delayed significantly, but critically, it didn't set the world on fire and didn't match the expectations, including myself, of being a game of the gen contender. But it did sell well and is probably one of the more positive performing titles for Xbox. Forza Motorsport. Despite Turn 10 taking a much longer development time than previous iterations and supposed to deliver a game built from the ground up, it fell short of its own standards and promises. It doesn't seem to have sold that well at all either. The big one is Halo. Head of Xbox Phil Spencer once said, "If we lose our way with Halo, we lose our way with Xbox." Yet, what we got met with is Halo Infinite, a title that failed on its own 10-year promise and a studio that needed a whole revision of its leadership. Hopefully now the old 343, which is called Halo Studios, is in better hands, but that remains to be seen. I didn't need to mention Redfall again, and I have to wonder about the quality and impact of titles like Indiana Jones and Avowed. Xbox has quite a diverse set of first-party games now, and really its roadmap puts Sony's to shame. Yet there is a sense of reservation about just how well Xbox will execute on this roadmap. And, well, why wouldn't there be? Everything on paper with Xbox always looks nice, but when it comes to execution, it falters. Now, this may seem like a very pessimistic view of the brand, but it's not born out of nothing. However, despite my skepticism, I will say that many of Xbox's future titles look very promising, and you will find very few who would argue against that. Titles like Fable, Doom, Perfect Dark, State of Decay, and Gears of War. These are extremely strong looking titles and an indication of a very potent roadmap. These titles are dream titles for a lot of Xbox fans, and there are a lot more titles that I haven't mentioned here. And yet, just as things are starting to look up, Xbox has shot itself in the foot in one very big fundamental way. The Village Bicycle Protocol. Open legs far and wide as Xbox transitions into being a third-party publisher. Xbox this year announced that it would be bringing its games to PlayStation. This is a declaration from Xbox admitting that it has lost the console war with Sony and has tremendous negative effects on the entirety of the industry. So many people downplay this as mere console war rhetoric, especially with me as I love to engage in it. But this isn't just a console war talking point. After all, when has less competition benefited the market? This strategy is without a doubt the biggest problem for Xbox and why it feels like a brand in disarray. Think about it. Xbox loudly proclaims you don't need a console. Xbox doesn't even get its own hardware right. And then it says, well, we're bringing our games to PlayStation. No indication whatsoever of just how wide this policy is. So the assumption is everything is fair game, especially with how Xbox permitted bloody Indiana Jones to be announced on stage as coming to PlayStation. So how on earth can anyone recommend an Xbox console? Especially when Xbox games will now run better on a PlayStation 5 Pro. I mean, even the base PlayStation 5 had games like Hi-Fi Rush and Pentiment running better on it. Xbox has not bothered clarifying at all what the restrictions are on its multi-platform strategy. But it's quite clear that as a result of its poor console sales, many of its first-party titles not selling that well, and generally the dominance of PlayStation on the market, Xbox just wants to rely on its software primarily. Hardcore Xbox fans will cite Xbox Game Pass as one of the things that distinguishes Xbox from other platforms, but Xbox Game Pass is just a value-based service. Sure, it's not insignificant, but Xbox Game Pass just doesn't work on its own. It needs to be backed by a strong library of good first-party titles and a release cadence that makes it worth subscribing to, especially after the price hikes for the service. And recently, it has not really done that. Xbox console players feel like they are treated as second or third class citizens, especially when PC gamers get to enjoy a lot of the benefits without the costs of paying monthly to play online, for instance. If someone were to ask me which next-gen console to buy, could I recommend an Xbox console over the next PlayStation when presumably most of Xbox's games are going to the PlayStation? Absolutely not. As an Xbox fan, it's quite frustrating that having hoped for the best of Xbox all these years, just as all the pieces line up, Xbox has seemingly caved in. Now Xbox just feels like Microsoft. There's always been some kind of separation before between Xbox and Microsoft, as Xbox was seen as more of a rogue offshoot of it. But that doesn't seem to be the case anymore, and that's where the problem lies. The Xbox brand has been diluted massively with no clear messaging and a leadership that has lost all confidence and competitive resolve, as evidenced by Phil Spencer basically announcing this. And I fear that Xbox will never become the platform that it could have been. Yes, I concede that things are moving generally towards a more platform agnostic future anyway, with PlayStation going all in on PC, but with Nintendo and PlayStation, they haven't relented that fully like Xbox has. And don't think that Xbox's moves are born out of being forward facing. I think it's by failure in execution of their previous policies and targets. I think that's obvious. So what is the future of Xbox? A lot of people are wondering just what Xbox is going to do in the future with its new console. It's not doing a mid-gen refresh, and rumors suggest that Xbox is going to release its console early to avoid being overshadowed by the PlayStation 6. This seems at odds with Xbox's desire to become more focused on software. Why lose more money on hardware that doesn't sell well? Will timed exclusives be enough to compel a significant number of people to even buy an Xbox console? Then there's talk of an Xbox handheld. Will it be part of the next Xbox? How will developers treat that device? How will Microsoft convince developers to take the next bit of Xbox hardware more seriously? What can Xbox do to court their favor as the gap between PlayStation and Xbox gets wider and wider? I am perplexed at Xbox's so-called strategy. You would think that a trillion-dollar corporation would know better not to destroy the value proposition of its brand. But then, this is the same trillion-dollar company that gave us the Xbox One. To me, it seems that Xbox is chasing short-term gains. Maybe because of pressure it's receiving from Satya Nadella. But killing the value proposition of the Xbox brand is not the way to go about it. It seems like Xbox does not even have a long-term strategy. Nothing has been communicated so far that suggests this at all. And what we really get is really hollow marketing speak from all the execs that does not do anything to instill confidence in Xbox. And long gone are the days of Phil Spencer being an almost near messianic character coming to woo gamers with his sweet words. Half-life of his words have well and truly passed, and the actions have not matched all the barking and the posturing. If Xbox is to stand any chance of remotely reinvigorating the confidence in the brand, it must absolutely make clear what its multi-platform plans are. Then, it must limit those plans. But I don't think that will happen. Xbox must also somehow prove to both gamers and developers that it's worth investing into the next Xbox console. Sure, Xbox faithful, particularly those who have built their library up on Xbox, will remain on Xbox. But beyond them, how is Xbox going to court the new market? The problem of gamers being invested into one ecosystem is compounded every generation. How will Xbox get their attention away from Sony? Is there even a chance? Is this why Xbox is looking at the mobile market? Good luck growing Xbox without the core gaming fan base, and value shouldn't be your primary weapon either, so banking on just Xbox Game Pass isn't going to cut it. Therefore, somehow, Xbox will need to show masses of creativity and quality to pull eyes on it. That means in both software and hardware. Time will tell. But I am very skeptical about it all. I feel like the next year or so will be very critical for Xbox. We're expecting some hardware announcements, perhaps for the handheld, and I don't think Xbox can afford to just stay quiet about what it's doing with its first-party releases. As more and more time goes on, and as more and more Xbox titles come to PlayStation, expect gamers to increasingly lose their commitment to the Xbox brand, at least as far as the console was concerned. Do you think Xbox will be fine? Are you an Xbox fan that is disillusioned with Xbox as of late? And if so, who do you blame for the way you feel about the brand? Let me know what you think in the comments below. Also, please let me know what you think of this kind of content. Typically what I do is I try to heavily edit my videos by spending hours finding the appropriate licensed music tracks and then deliver my monologue over those tracks. But that comes at a heavy price where I don't get to post regularly. I think with this format I can deliver more content more often and with more detailed conversations as a result. I still intend to make those heavily edited videos like the source content, so don't worry about that, but please let me know your thoughts. And do check out my Patreon, which is in the description below, where I will be releasing content exclusively as well as earlier than on YouTube. If you enjoyed this video, please let me know, and if you want more content like this, hit the like button and subscribe. Thank you and take care.